Yes, the idea for this meeting came about when myself and Ted Bean and Emily Booth were traveling in Massachusetts this past May, and we were visiting with Plymouth and Bristol and Norfolk mosquito, and they had various degrees of where they were at in the Coquillettidia Perturbans larval control. I know Norfolk has been involved with several years of work, and Plymouth was getting started, and Bristol was kind of monitoring the situation. But we thought that there was a lot of similarities between Massachusetts and Michigan because both these states had to respond with large aerial sprays to kind of knock down, the threat of triple E transmission. So we've just selected a few districts. We've got one in Illinois, 3 in Massachusetts, 3 in Michigan, 1 in New Jersey, and 1 in Virginia that'll be participating today. And it's basically, let's see if we can, share information, teach, and learn from each other on, how to do surveillance, how to do treatments, and learn the effects of putting down these larvicides in these Coquillettidia perturbans habitats. And I'm going to start the meeting with introducing our participants today. And in Massachusetts at Norfolk, we've got the Superintendent Dave Lawson and his biologist Kaitlyn O'Donnell. And Kaitlyn is really has become an expert with regard to sampling techniques, understanding the biology of the larvae. She's gotten really, really good and proficient at sampling these larvae, which is difficult and can be tough to do. They're going to provide an overview of what they've seen and what they're currently doing. They're doing some aerial and ground treatments. And then we'll go over to Bristol, and Todd Duval and Priscilla Matton have definitely been on the front lines of the triple E outbreak. They sit just to the north of the Plymouth Mosquito Control Project. They share a large habitat where they've got Coquillettidia melanura, as well as perturbans and Culex. And Priscilla is going to be using some of the data from Dr. Ted Andreadis' work on vector competency. Ted Andreadis was the guest speaker at the last Michigan mosquito control that we had in 2019. So some of this will just be a refresher from some of our friends in Michigan. And then Ross Rosetti is the airplane pilot and the superintendent at Plymouth Mosquito Control. And I think Ross completed his aerial application yesterday, so we'll get an update from him. And Ellen Bidlack is his field biologist and is just very knowledgeable about melanura and perturbans. So hopefully Ellen can shed some light on her thoughts. And then we'll move over to Michigan after we hear from our friends in Massachusetts. And Ben Seago is with Advanced Pest Management, has been doing some innovative work off of an airboat. And he's making both spring and fall applications, so we'll get an update from Ben. And then we will maybe get an update from Rebecca and Bill at Bay County and Saginaw, Michigan, just to kind of what they see in their areas. And it's just kind of an informal, sitting around the campfire having a discussion here this morning. I think we'll have plenty of time at the end for some Q&A. And with that said, we've got quite a few people from ADAPCO. ADAPCO is Valent BioSciences national distributor for all of our products. I think Julianne Lemke, the national sales manager, is planning to join us. Ted Bean and Evan are up in Plymouth this morning. Joe Iberg is with me here in Chesapeake, Virginia. Christina Flores, that covers the Midwest, she's there, and I see South Cook County, I believe, is on with us this morning. And then from Valent BioSciences, I've got Chris Byrne, who is in our office in Libertyville. Chris is in our marketing department. Chris is very instrumental in doing both our floodwater and our walls webinars that took place earlier. Nate Hill covers Idaho, Colorado, and Utah. And then we've got another fellow that may be on here, but he's on the Pacific time zone, Drew Hunter. Drew Hunter is our national sales manager. So with that said, I probably missed some people, but maybe during the meeting, we will get to know each other a little bit here. And that's one of the objectives, is to establish these lines of communications where you can reach out to your fellow mosquito control professionals and, have a phone call, emails, and share information, and hopefully help us all do our jobs better. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dave Lawson in Norfolk, and let's get a report from Dave and Kaitlyn on what they've been doing and what they've been learning, and we'll take it from there.
So I think I'll just let Kaitlyn start. We got a few PowerPoint slides that she's going to share and talk about. A lot of this was stuff she reported on at the NMCA last year, so we've just condensed it a little bit. And then I can, I guess, chime in at the end, Kaitlyn, or whatever.
Okay. All right, so I think I'm sharing my screen now. Is that the case?
Yes.
I've not actually used Microsoft Teams before, so.
Yeah, it's up there.
Looks great.
Okay. All right, great. So I don't really have a ton to say as far as the 2021 update goes, but I'll just go through kind of what we have done and up through the aerial that we performed a week ago now. So just a quick update on our perturbance work. In 2020, we applied Vectolex FG at 15 pounds per acre to a total of 130 acres in 3 different wetland complexes, and that was done on September 24th. And these are the 3 wetlands we were targeting. Franklin was the site that we started working with and treating first in 2018.
Kaitlyn?
Yep.
Can you start your slideshow? I think we're still on the first slide.
Oh. Maybe can you see the next slide now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So maybe I just won't enter the slideshow and I'll just go through like this, because I think that might have been why.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, so 2020, we applied Vectolex FG at 15 pounds per acre. We targeted 3 different wetland complexes, and those 3 wetlands we chose based on adult perturbans numbers from nearby CDC traps, along with additional traps that we placed in different areas when needed. And we just wanted to target wetlands that produced a lot of perturbans, but were also near a lot of neighborhoods where we had high numbers of spray requests, and we knew that perturbans were bothering people and were in high numbers. And we applied last year in 2020 on September 24th. These are maps of the 3 wetlands that we treated. So we chose 3 different complexes in Franklin, Westwood, and Dedham. Franklin and Westwood were both treated starting in 2018 every year. Dedham we added in 2019. I'll go, and then just briefly, we have some aerial maps of our control sites. So we have a couple traps that we set out where we have not treated, just to compare our numbers to those treated sites. And I've presented a couple times at NMCA and some other conferences on our results. So our kind of preliminary results from 2020 with our larval surveillance was that we did see a drop in larval counts at treated sites post-application, and the field crew was able to observe dead larvae in the water at treated sites. So that was pretty promising from our results last year. And Dedham was kind of the mystery site because we had huge numbers of perturbans and couldn't really tell exactly where they were coming from. If we go back to our Dedham slide, the wetlands that we treated are pretty small, and we really weren't sure exactly where these huge numbers of perturbans were coming from. So we were able to see a reduction in larvae at these Dedham sites, which was promising and hopeful for 2021, just because the numbers we get out of that site are huge. So after 2020, going forward, we wanted to really explore the Dedham area a little bit more. We had low larval numbers, but we still had high CDC numbers. So we wanted to find out exactly where they were coming from. We had plans to explore the area a little bit more by ground and find other possible sources like retention ponds. And we wanted to add more CDC traps in the area to kind of hone in on where the adults were coming from. So in Dedham, we added these supplemental traps around the whole complex. This up here in a park across the street, our original historical trap, another trap in each of kind of surrounding each of these wetlands. And we had record numbers of perturbans this summer. We were able to kind of guesstimate where all these adults are coming from because our highest producing traps were within this circle. So we are hoping that by adding this section, this northernmost section to our aerial this year, we will be able to really see a reduction in adults as well as a reduction in larvae in the wetlands. This area was not previously on the Dedham aerial in the past 2 years. So we added that on. This map shows the entire treated area for Dedham for 2021. So our application, we did the same, applied at the same rate, Vectolex. We targeted a total of 100 acres, and we focused on 2 different wetland complexes, and we applied on September 20th, 2021. We decided to remove Franklin from our aerial treatments, and that's because our perturbans numbers have actually been dropping there, and it's probably more to do with habitat changes. There's a lot of beaver activity in the area. The wetland is just kind of behaving a little bit differently this year, and over the past couple of years, it's just been changing. The water levels are much different, and there is still cattail in the area, and we're still going to be dipping for larvae just to kind of monitor it, but it doesn't seem to be as good of a perturbans producing site as it once was. So I'll show some aerial maps of the areas that we treated. This is the Westwood site. So we have these 3 wetlands within the same complex, and that was treated in 2018 through this year. And then our Dedham targeted wetlands. And we did some, the field crew did some pre-treatment larval dipping and was finding perturbans larvae at each of these sites along with our control sites, probably in slightly lower numbers than they were finding last year, but they're still finding perturbans at most of these sites. And it's still a little early for our post-dipping to really know what our numbers are now. So we'll have to update you once we get a little bit more post-dipping done. But that's kind of the overview of last year and this year. I don't know if Dave, if you have anything else to add.
I guess no, that was good. I'd say we went into this with the idea, like Kaitlyn's already mentioned, we get really crazy numbers at Dedham, and so the idea was maybe we could figure out the larval source and make a difference in the adult traps. And I think up to this point, we've proven we can control the larvae when we pre and post dip in the wetlands. We see good control, but so far it's been challenging to see the kind of results in the adult CDC traps. So we're still
Yeah, but
actually hoping.
if you could control the larvae, and if you can control them in the larvae state, then they won't get to the point of being adults.
Right.
You know,
So the
that's when you
question
gotta
is,
get
though,
to them.
the question is like, so what extent of larval control do we need to do to see the numbers go down significantly in our adult CDC traps? So that's sort of been the challenge for us, is like, where are they coming from? How far are they coming out from? So we're sort of still trying to pin that. We do have hope that, having treated all of this acreage in Dedham, we'll see a big significant drop next year. The other thing I'll say briefly is Jim, years ago introduced me to Mark Smith up in Minnesota, and he's been a huge mentor along the way. We learned how to make the sieve dippers that we're using to do the surveillance with, and they've worked really well. And we, so they sort of did all this work ahead of time. So doing it in the fall, at the application rate we're doing, all that kind of stuff was figured out by those guys in Minnesota ahead of us. So I'll just make note of that and give them credit for that as well.
Thanks,
so
Dave. Go ahead, Kaitlyn.
I was just going to say there, and in addition to Dedham, there's one other site. It can just kind of be tricky to find out exactly which wetlands the perturbans are coming from, because they can fly a decent distance, and we have a lot of cattail habitat here, and they can be kind of in smaller pockets and covering a larger area. So we're trying to figure out if at these high producing sites we can kind of narrow in on one source, and whether, if we are able to treat that one source, we can reduce the adult population. Otherwise, if it's, too sprawling of a wetland complex, we're never going to be able to treat it all and have it be economical for us. So still kind of trying to figure out whether we can target some smaller wetlands that we know are producing, and make a difference in the adult population.
Yeah, that's excellent. I think it's a common observation that people have. I know Lisa's sitting back behind me here nodding her head, and she totally agrees with what you're observing there of, treating areas and then, still seeing large numbers in the traps. But it sounds like you guys have got a good plan in place, and you're hopefully finding some answers. Okay, are we all wrapped up there, Dave?
I think so. I don't know if anyone has an immediate question. I don't know what your format is, Jim, if someone wants to ask a question now, or you want to wait.
Yeah, I would like to kind of wait to the end, make
Okay.
sure we've got enough time to get through the presentation material. So
Super.
we'll come
Okay.
back to you.
Well,
Yep.
I actually have Bristol's slide on here, so I can advance to that if they're ready.
Okay. Priscilla, you there?
Yes, Todd and I are here.
Okay.
So Todd's going to
All
take
right.
over.
Okay,
So-
Todd, it's all yours.
Our perturbans habitat is very localized and very small. In one just under 30-acre cattail swamp, which is sort of circular, it's not as gerrymandered as Kaitlyn's Dedham site there, so we're a little bit lucky. We get about just around 45 to 50% of all the perturbans in the county come from that immediate area. So we thought that by treating that one hotspot would reduce our numbers pretty well. So this year we put was it Vectolex FG at 10 pounds per acre through this about 27 of this 30 acres swamp. We treated it in towards the end of May, and we did some larval sampling, and I don't have that data here, but this is the adult sampling from the CDC trap that we've had there for about 10 years. And I wanted to compare it, the adults this year to the possible range of adults that we see in other years. I know adult sampling is a little bit more tricky because they do fly, and we can't guarantee that they all came from this one swamp, but I wanted to see if we had any kind of an impact. Starting off into the spring, it looked like we were right on track to have a regular perturbance year, like there was no effect at all, but that immediately dropped off after a couple of weeks. And we didn't see nearly the peaks that we did. We saw a significant reduction in our adults until the second peak. Again, they're bivoltine, I think they're bivoltine in this swamp. So we didn't start seeing perturbans at all really until August, and not nearly in the numbers this year that we have in previous years. So.
Yeah, we were really excited to see it continuingly, that blue line continuing to go down week after week. Not so happy at the beginning, wasn't sure what was going on. So
yeah. I think we got our peak about 2 weeks early this year for perturbans, our first peak. And then after that, maybe there were, they were too far along when we treated. Maybe those were the adults that came off, but we saw an immediate reduction after that.
So we plan on probably repeating this coming spring. Maybe a little bit earlier if we can, but we'll have to look at the dates to see when we want to make that application.
I guess, back to Norfolk now. Norfolk, you're making all your applications in the fall of the year?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And this is a May application we're looking at here, a spring, sort of a late spring.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay.
For us, last year, the water level just wasn't really there. I mean, I didn't really have the money to do it either, but for sure the water level wasn't really there going into the fall. So but coming into the spring of this year, it was much better.
Excellent. Priscilla, did you have any additional information about, vector competency and those kind of subjects?
Yes, I think we're trying to bring up the slides now. That one, yeah. Do you guys see the slides?
Yes.
Okay. So I pulled this information from Dr. Ted Andreadis's information and his different either projects that he worked on directly or different articles of which he grabbed his information from. And what we were trying to figure out, and Massachusetts Department of Public Health actually wanted to find out, was what were the bridge vectors in Massachusetts and which ones were most important. And what Ted did for us is really narrow it down to the most important steps. And that includes like mosquito behaviors. So, are they aggressive biters? Are they opportunistic? What did they prefer to feed on in that respect? Bird behavior. So are we looking at hatchling birds, new birds, naive birds, that kind of stuff. But we also needed to look at the temporal and spatial relationship. That is really the most important. And at first, Connecticut wasn't sure that in their district, so it'll be important for each of us, since we're talking about a few different states, to make sure that in each of our districts, we have that relationship. And if those mosquitoes, in terms of Culicida melanura in our case, building up and amplifying EEE in the environment, followed by a high population of perturbans, that are located in the same space at the same time, you can potentially get an outbreak of EEE. And then virus detections. What are the mosquitoes of which we are trying to sample from and test? So in Massachusetts, we might be slightly different from some of the other states because we do pay for testing. So we tend to really limit the types of mosquitoes that we're testing for West Nile and EEE. So Todd put together this slide for me, and it is a log mosquito population per trap per night. And the reason why we put the data this way is that we collect so many mosquitoes, especially of perturbans. When you look at the numbers compared to the amount of melanura, you don't really you didn't really see what I sort of wanted everyone to see. And this is that temporal spatial relationship. You get the orange line of melanura building up over a few weeks, which means that they can start to get infected with Triple E, start to infect the birds, grow that amplification population before we get the peak of perturbans. And in our area, our peak is around the 4th of July, but it stays up there for a while. So when you have the perturbans come out first, when you have the Coquillettidia melanura come out first, build up in populations, even if they're less than your perturbans populations, you're still getting a great amplifier in your environment, and you're going to increase the amount of virus that's available in infected birds for your then extremely high perturbans population. So those are the two things that we need. What Dr. Andreadis and Goudars-Mollet looked at was, what were they feeding on? And what they found out was that perturbans does feed on birds pretty readily, and that is important. So host preference plays a huge role. And I know that obviously the percentages are much more significant for mammals, but when you're talking about collecting anywhere from 1,000 to 10,000 in a night in a trap, you're talking about a significant population of perturbans. So even a small percentage, like 10% of the perturbans population feeding on birds, can significantly make a difference, and can certainly increase your ability to spread Triple E in an area. So what Ted did is, after looking at a bunch of data, he looked at what he considered to be some of the more important aspects of making a good human vector for Triple E, especially in the Northeast. And isolation, so how much virus is isolated from that species of mosquito, what's the range? So like Kaitlyn was talking about, they can certainly fly quite a bit of distance. So what are we looking for in terms of the ability to infect a lot of people, or the ability to come in contact with birds that may be infected? Seasonality, activity, so this is again that ability for it to come out and stay out for a long period of time. Coquillettidia perturbans are extremely long-lived, so you get an ability to be infected over a course of a couple of months as opposed to a very short period of time. Perturbans does like to feed on mammals as well as birds pretty significantly, and then vector competence. So they looked at the ability for the mosquito to actually be able to then take in Triple E, and then have it travel to the salivary glands and then be able to pass it back on. And when he looked at that, he ranked the species in our area that he thought was most important, and Coquillettidia perturbans falls right there in the middle. And comparatively to most of the other mosquito controls, perturbans would be their #1 mosquito. For us, our site also includes a lot of Culex salinarius, so that's something that we have to take into consideration in a year that we have a lot of Triple E activity. Todd didn't mention, but we did see a shift over to the use of the area with Culex salinarius in extremely high numbers. And then in years when there's a lot of canadensis, we also have to be really careful because they are a great vector competence. So when it comes to Coquillettidia perturban, they're just a very aggressive biter. They're opportunistic, high populations, so they really do have an ability to be anywhere in the environment, and certainly they have the ability to be our primary human vector for Triple E in Massachusetts.
And that's excellent information, and a lot of work went into creating that information. Appreciate you digging that out, Priscilla, and refreshing everybody's memory.
Thank you.
Okay, let's see. I guess we'll move over to Michigan. Ben, are you ready to go?
All righty. Well, sorry about that. I don't know. Basically, Jim mentioned name's Ben Seago with APM Mosquito Control. We have some information. By no means do we have all the right answers. We've got some answers. I think we're getting somewhere. Just going to kind of share our experience and go from there. So a little bit of background on the company. Excuse me, APM Mosquito Control were established in 1986. We are family owned and operated. We've evolved into one of the largest private contractors in the state of Michigan. We are currently under contract with a little over 30 townships and cities, mostly throughout mid, northeast, southeast Michigan, and then the Thumb area. And we primarily deal with perturbans in the Thumb of Michigan, specifically Seago. And I'll just kind of keep jumping right through this here. Prior to Seago, we dealt with a lot of accounts with just your standard floodwater mosquitoes. Spring 80s, summer floodwater mosquitoes, Culex, Anopheles. So we began our services out in Seago here, like I said, in 2018. And everything was going very smooth all through the spring and into the early parts of the summer. And we're like, man, there's not really a whole lot of mosquitoes out here. And they had a sugar festival late June, and folks just got tore up. And this was the first time we've really, APM as an organization, we've really experienced large amounts of perturbans. And obviously, if we're looking at perturbans, we're looking at habitat. So there is all on the western border here. I don't know how well you guys can see this here, but this whole western border of Seago, this is the village of Seago, and the whole western border just has, I have thousands of acres, but probably tens of thousands of acres of Phragmites. And any folks on the call that have dealt with Phragmites, you really can't navigate through them. You can do some treatments from the shore, but they're just a son of a gun to try to get through, and they're dense out there. It's not just one little pocketed site. It's an entire Saginaw Bay shore. So a little bit of background on that. I'm sure everyone's pretty well aware. I'm going to kind of try to skip through these. I do have a love-hate relationship with them now. It's kind of been a personal mission of our crew to get these under control the last couple years. They are tough but rewarding to kill. They're tough to kill primarily because they do not have to come to the water surface for oxygen. One of the longest living mosquitoes in the US. They do have a 1-year lifespan. I assume most of you guys know this, but they do overwinter as larvae, breathing through the cattail roots. The other district mentioned the adult populations typically peak right around the 4th of July. That's pretty common in Michigan as well. However, this year, I really think we saw them a little bit earlier as well. So we're looking at mid to late June is when we saw our peak, I think, this past summer. And adult females are obviously very aggressive biters, 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. when weather conditions are acceptable. And 5 to 6 blood meals is important as well, because the way that I describe it is they basically enter a feeding frenzy starting at 10 p.m. And I'm going to emphasize that 10 p.m. is like a flip of a switch for the adults to be active. We're going to talk about our larval treatments, but I also have some slides in here about adulticiding that we've done. And that'll come into play later on. That 10 p.m. is important for trying to target adult populations after they've hatched out. So I've got a brief larviciding timeline for y'all here. We came under contract in 2018, and we were a little bit blindsided, I'll be honest, in that summer. So we went to the drawing board, and we used Alticid briquettes in the Saginaw Bayshore in March of 2019. And it was pretty unsuccessful. We didn't see any real decrease in adult populations. What we found is a lot of these briquettes that we used, they just got stuck in the muck out there. It was unfortunate, but we went back to the drawing board, and I had a conversation with Christina, I remember, and she mentioned Vectolex was a good option, and she had some experience controlling, excuse me, I'm gonna take a drink of water real quick. Controlling larval populations with with Vectolex. So in 2020, we did a ground application of Vectolex, and we apply twice a year. Basically, we're applying early in the summer and then later in the summer and late summer, early fall. And in the summer of 2020, we applied by ground, and we just have a hard time, or we had a hard time covering the area. And I just want to emphasize how dense and how big these sites of Phragmites are, because it's like the Saginaw Bay is like a small, it's like a small ocean really here in Michigan. So we've got a lot of area to cover. We applied by ground, and we basically walked out there with hip waders on, applying with a power backpack, trying to cover as much as we could, but there's just a lot of the area that we couldn't cover. So it was actually my mom, is the owner of the company. She had an idea to reach out to some people in the area and see if we can rent an airboat possibly. And we've got some connections out in the Thumb after working in Seaboing and Caseville the last couple of years. And we got a hold of this young guy. This is Kaitlyn out of the Thumb. He's a real good guy, but he got us on an airboat. And basically we're applying at 5+ pounds to the acre. I have 5+ in there because it's probably in the range of 5 to 10 pounds to the acre. It's pretty hard to tell with these power backpacks. Basically, we just lay it on thick, and we're applying to the cattail roots, or the Phragmites roots, sorry, and we're applying early in the summer, typically the first week of June, and then this past year it was the week prior to Labor Day. And this airboat was sweet because we were able to get into areas that we didn't really even know existed, and we were able to cover areas, I think, much more effectively and efficiently. Because instead of having 3 2-man crews out there, we now have basically 4 of us in this airboat. But you're cutting labor costs, you're cutting fuel costs, you're cutting all sorts of costs, and then you're increasing coverage. So we thought this was a very cost-effective treatment this past year. And this is just kind of a breakdown of what we're doing. I want to remind everybody that we are working within a municipal budget capability. So if in a perfect world, if we had 2 or 3 skids, we would absolutely apply more pounds. We probably would apply it heavier. But we're working with a largely rural community out in the Thumb of Michigan, so we're working with the budget capabilities that they have. So right up here, we did 1 skid per season, so 1,600 pounds total. And we applied 800 pounds early in the summer, and then another 800 pounds late summer and early in the fall. And then you guys can kind of see right here, we're using these power backpacks. These are Mariama granular backpacks. And basically, we are trying to kill the larvae before and after they stage on the cattail roots. So again, they'll come off the cattail roots, we think, somewhere in the month of June to complete the rest of their growth cycle. Maybe mid-May to early June to complete the rest of their growth cycle, like I said. But if you have a peak adult emergence late June and early July, we are thinking if we apply early June, we'll get larvae coming off the cattail roots to complete their cycle to become adults that summer. And then obviously we're going to apply again early September to kill as many larvae as we can before they stage that following winter. So, or that coming winter, I should say. And then, so I really want to emphasize the importance of adulticiding as well. Because like I said, and this goes with larvae too, but one female can lay 150 to 350 eggs. And I believe the distribution is 1-to-1. I think it's male 1 to female 1 as far as the eggs. They're pretty evenly distributed. But basically, we do our Vectolex treatments, and then as soon as we start to see adults emerge in our traps, in our CDC and New Jersey traps, we hit them hard. And I'll be honest with you guys. One thing we went to this year is this was the Motley Mosquito crew here. This is the 5-man woodlot crew. And we used ULV backpacks. And mind you, we're in isolated areas. We're not in a bigger city at all. This is largely a rural area. But basically what we did was pinpoint large woodlots around these Phragmites sites. And I'll be honest with you guys, yes, these adults might start feeding in a large scale around 10 p.m. at night. But if you ever walk into these large woodlots in the middle of the afternoon on a calmer day, you know, obviously it's not raining, but on a calm, sunny day, they'll come after you. So we decided basically to go get them where they're harbored up all day. So this was the woodlot crew, like I said, and we pinpointed woodlots around these large sites, and we basically got all in a line and fogged them out of there. We also have a couple four-wheeler units that we use to fog these woodlots as well. And then I'm not sure, I'm pretty sure everyone's probably aware with ULV truck fogging, but that's just kind of a no-brainer out here for us in Seaboing. And then I've got down here, you've got to have fog in the air at 10 p.m. And I'll just tell a quick story. Basically, was out there fogging with the four-wheeler unit, and all of a sudden I get bit on my neck once, and then again and again and again. I looked down at my watch, and it was 9:57. So I cannot emphasize the importance. If you're trying to knock down, obviously we're all trying to knock down perturbant populations, both in the water and in the air. But if you want to get them when they begin flying at 10 p.m., you've got to have trucks in the area, and you've got to have fog in the air. I would say no later than 9:45, to be honest. That way, when they emerge out of the woodlots and enter their feeding frenzy, they're met with fog. So I got in here, and this is probably the case with every mosquito species. Humidity seems to play a huge factor in their flight behavior, and just what I noticed out there, even if it was a windier night, typically when we're trying to plan these fogging operations or the nighttime operations, I'm looking at the calmest night of the week, or sometimes the calmest 2 nights of the week to go out there and fog, primarily so that our spray is effective. And what I noticed out there is that these perturbans will fly into the wind, and they almost prefer a night where, I'm not going to say prefer, but I just noticed that on a more humid night, even if the wind was a little bit stronger, they would still fly and feed like crazy. So here's some more on ULV truck fogging. We're talking about fogging the village streets. We increased our dosage rates up to 1.5 to 2 ounces to the acre at times. And basically, we've got 2 trucks in the area, and we light up that whole area. And like I said, no later than sundown, and that's about 10 p.m. midsummer. We're using a permethrin product. It's Biomist 4.4, 4% piperonal butoxide and 4% permethrin. We are on the Saginaw Bay shore out there, so Seaboing, the whole area regularly provides us with challenges. It's windy out there because you are on a bigger body of water. Sometimes, you'll have a night that's forecasted, 3 to 5 miles an hour wind, and all of a sudden 11, 12 o'clock at night rolls around and the wind picks up. So it can be frustrating, but ULV truck fogging is just huge. It's just instrumental for that program, because that's just does your heavy lifting with adult populations. So and here's a couple four-wheeler units that we've got. And again, you can go into these woodlots, guys, if you're in isolated areas. We keep I don't want to make it seem like we're just going and blasting out areas, because we keep a call and shut off list. We notify all the residents that we're going to be in the area. We know where our beekeepers are. We're following all the label laws, all the regulations with Michigan Department of Ag and Rural Development. But basically, we can sneak into these isolated areas away from our shut-off zones and nail them with the ULV unit on the four-wheeler. And these are areas that you really can't get to with a truck, smaller 2 tracks, and you would be surprised. You can go into some of these pocketed areas and really, you can really knock down a lot of these perturbans. So And here's some of our results. And I think they kind of speak for themselves. I'm going to give a little caveat down here, but our peak perturbant count in 2019 was 411 females, and these are New Jersey traps. We did see some higher numbers with CDCs, but I want to just emphasize these are New Jersey light trap results. So our peak perturbant count, like I said, was 411 for 2019. Our peak count for 2020 was 321. And then this past season, our peak count for 2021, we did not exceed 3 females. And I have over here, we had heavy treatments near Bay Street. Bay Street is one of our go-to traps for perturbans. We've got 4 traps out in the Seagoing area. So basically, I wanted to show you guys that our trap is right there, and all of our Vectolex treatments are pretty much right around where that trap is going to be. So I think that plays a huge factor. And then a lot of the woodlots that we're fogging as well. There's several within the village that we're fogging with the 4-wheeler, with the backpacks, but we did fog a lot of these woodlots and pretty regularly around that New Jersey trap. So I don't want to skew any of the information, but we're knocking them down pretty good, I think. Yeah, this is just moving forward. We recently completed our second airboat treatment. That was the week prior to Labor Day 2021. We're pretty happy with the coverage we're getting on the airboat. So this is my brother and I. We will plan to continue those treatments next year. I think we're going to move to an earlier initial treatment. So our summer treatment, instead of doing that in June, I think we're starting to see perturbans a little bit earlier in Michigan. I think we're going to go ahead and apply in May, mid to late May, with that 30-day Vectolex to cover us until what I think the true peak is late June. So, and we also may entertain a stronger adulticide, specifically a stronger PBO. We've talked with Clark about having a stronger activator for those woodlots and for the areas. Basically, what that may do is stir up more perturbans in the areas that we're fogging, so that obviously we kill more of them. So, and then yeah, we'll just continue fogging when the adults emerge next summer. And we're excited. I think this fall treatment's really going to help us out quite a bit. And it was just a big logistics hurdle. We didn't have it in the budget to perform aerial work. Drone technology is there. It's not quite there in my opinion yet. And we had just a logistics nightmare trying to get through the frags with this airboat. It seemed to be working good. And then I just want to emphasize too, as soon as you guys start to see adult populations, if you go ahead and hit them hard and continue to do so until they stop their peak, late July, early August, you will see a significant knockdown in your adult populations as well. So that's pretty much all I got. I hope everybody learned something, and hopefully if anybody has any questions or comments, you guys can go ahead and ask right now. By no means are we got it all figured out. I'm just sharing the information that we have, and hopefully it can help somebody, and we'll continue to hit them hard. So.
Okay, Ben, that's an excellent presentation. You guys have done a great job with your perturbans up there, and looks like you've made some nice progress. So to kind of finish up here, I want to go back to Massachusetts and give Plymouth a few minutes to tell us what they've been doing. Again, Plymouth is just below where Priscilla and Todd are. And Ross, Ellen, are you there?
Yep, we're here. Ellen's
Can you kind of tell the group what you've been up to?
Yeah, we just got done with our fall application. We did just under 300 acres at 2 different perturbance sites. We're using an airplane, and we're doing about 15 pounds the acre. And Ellen did a couple slides that you can go through if you'd like.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is one of our areas. It's a old cranberry bog, and now it's being used as a reservoir for the surrounding cranberry bogs. And you can see in the photo here the bogs surrounding the area. It's about 100 acres. We treated it in the spring, and we're only able to get into one section to sample it because of a perimeter ditch that surrounds the area. But I have the sampling area circled below as well. So there's the spray lines from the application that we did in mid-May. So if we play the video, you can see this is this wetland here. On the right of the dirt road, you can see the wetland. And this is Ross coming in. I think this is one of his first passes. Look to the cranberry bog to the left. So that gives you a sense of what the area looks like. For the application, we put out some tubs to collect the chemical to see how well we did. And just to document that we had good deposition on the site. And you can see on the zoomed in section of the water, you can see lots of little Vectolex granules. And this is just what it looked like in the barrels, and then what it looked like when I counted it up. In the next slide, I think you can see. So we had 5 buckets out, and this is what we had for the deposition in each of those 5 buckets. I haven't had a chance to actually figure out what that would mean in terms of the rate for the area we were sampling, but you can see, that's pretty good deposition in the site. So I fortunately didn't have controls, but you can see we went out. These are the totals. These are the averages per dip for the over the course of into June. So you can see we had a decrease in the numbers. It's so that's what our results were for the dipping. I think that was it. I haven't yet put together the trap data. We have a New Jersey trap in the area, and I haven't yet put that data together. This site has only recently begun to produce perturbans, and I located it via the increase of perturbans in an adjacent trap. So curious to see what those results will be. We just did our second application this fall. I think fall is probably going to be the better time simply because the larvae aren't as far along. I think the spring application, particularly mid-May, we had a lot of fourths, but I think this one is probably a little better timing. So that's what I got.
Okay, thanks a lot, Ellen, for providing your trap collection data, and we'll see what this application you guys completed yesterday does, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I guess for the second time, Rebecca, did you want to say anything? I know you're close to the area that Ben was referencing there. Do you want to say anything about what you're up against there in your area?
This is where Bay County is. We are about 50 miles to the east of where Ben has done his treatment. Bay County has about 30 miles of shoreline along the Saginaw Bay, which is essentially Lake Huron. So over the past 20 years, we have been overrun with the invasive, it's a non-native reed called Phragmites along our shoreline area. So along with the growth of those Phragmites, we have also seen our perturbans numbers increase with it. And our Phragmites can start from the shoreline and go about a half mile deep into the Saginaw Bay. So what we have been working to do is really determine that Phragmites is a viable habitat for perturbans. We know cattails are. We wanted some data behind it before we do treatment. So this summer we were successful in Mary, our biologist, developed an adult emergence trap. We placed those out there on the Saginaw Bay shore. We were able to find adult perturbans. We were successful in larval dipping this fall in the same area, so we have determined it is viable habitat. But here's some of the issues that we have that we want to kind of work out before we determine treatment. We want to take a sample site. You know, we've got 30 miles of shoreline, which all have Phragmites. We would like to take about a 6-mile stretch on the eastern portion of our county and use that as a sample site for an aerial treatment, hopefully in the near future. We are open water on the Saginaw Bay, so that's kind of where we're different and what APM is doing too. It's not an inland pond or an inland marsh. We want to make sure that we work with our Department of Natural Resources, our environmental quality departments, because they technically are the overseers of the open waters of Michigan. We want to coordinate and make sure what we do, if we do treatment in these areas, it's in line with what they have in mind. Another concern is doing an application, you know, again, we have in mind a Vectolex aerial treatment, about 10 pounds an acre, just based on MMCD's information and what we're hearing here. But the wind and the current in the Saginaw Bay, when we do a treatment, we need to make sure weather conditions are perfect, because the wind and current can easily move that product out into the bay, into Lake Huron. So we need to make sure when we're doing treatment that the product is going to stay where we want it to, at least for some period of time, to get some control. Additionally, this sample area, which we're talking about here, is about 1,000 to 2,000 acres on its own for our sample treatment. If we do it, you know, that's easily going to run us into the 6 figures to do this. So we want to, if we do a treatment, is it sustainable to do it? You know, how often are we actually going to be able to do it? And if we do it, are we going to see a decrease in adult numbers like we would hope to? Again, we are a low-lying marshy county, especially on the eastern portion here. We border another county that has the same sort of habitat. We've got ponds and marshes and drainage ditches that all have Phragmites to it inland. So we would like to see what sort of data we would get if we do a shoreline treatment. Is it going to be significant enough decrease in adult mosquitoes, given that we neighbor this county, that we have the inland habitats as well? So that's kind of where we lie right now. We've got the data to know that we should be doing it and where we should be doing it. The next is coordinating with the correct departments and seeing where to get started and how much to actually do for an initial treatment.
Perfect. Bill, Saginaw, just south of her. Do you have anything you want to share with the group?
Yeah, if everyone can hear me, let me see if I can pull this up. Can you see my screen? The nice map of the mitten? Great. So here's just a picture of our county, and Rebecca and her group's just to the north. And we can zoom in and you can hopefully see Seago up here. But in Saginaw County, we're low and flat, and Rebecca had a nice slide there that showed the watershed, and all that water comes through Saginaw, surprisingly, from the north, comes through us, and then back out through the Saginaw River into the bay. So our challenge in Saginaw County is we're low and flat, and we have a large wildlife refuge in the middle. And we know where our perturbans are coming from, and it's this area right in the center of our county. And this is the city of Saginaw up here, but you can see this confluence of rivers. There's 5 major rivers that come into the Saginaw River and out into the Saginaw Bay. But this is all managed for migratory waterfowl. They routinely move water around within the refuge system and flood areas that otherwise wouldn't be flooded. So it's one of those, you know, a challenge for us is communicating with our refuge on what they're doing with their water, because it quickly goes from everything's happy around the county to what the heck happened, and they had to open a dike to flood some area. But we also have a challenge on this side, and we have a village of St. Charles here. We're at the state game area, which is, again, for anywhere from white-tailed deer to a large population of waterfowl, and they flood this every September. It's mainly your Aedes mosquitoes, frustration, but we get perturbans from here too. So that's a challenge there, and it's right around our populated areas, as well as just to the south of Rebecca in Bay County is this Crow Island state game area. And luckily, this is still, well, luckily, unluckily, it's still mainly cattail habitat, and we get hordes of perturbans out of this area. So challenges for us
Well,
are.
Bill, was that not you in Bay County or Rebecca in Midland County getting 8,500 perturbans in the trap, females?
Oh, yeah, sure. We can get close to 10,000 mosquitoes, right? If we have this woodlot down here, we'll throw a CDC trap just baited with dry ice, and we can pull close to 10,000 mosquitoes out of that. But with this is, oh, someone's got a phone ringing. All right, so it's going to be cost for us for application. But I will kind of echo a little bit of what Ben was saying. We're fortunate enough, and with this bug, is they like to fly, and they're out flying when we can do adulticide operations. So when we're able to go into an area and just do some after dark treatment, we can get a nice handle to it's enough to where it gives the citizens, the residents, a reprieve from the bug for a little bit, and then of course the next horde comes out. What I mean by that is just as they continually fly out during their emergence. June into July is when they peak. For us, looking at decades of data, we'll have a couple years where there's a lot of them. Then they'll drop almost 3/4 down to a population where they stay, and then they'll resurge later on. Mainly one population a year. I'm certain as we zoom out that a lot of our water and problem with perturbans does move around with not only regional or flooding of our county here, but also what's happening in the Great Lakes as the water levels come up and down over time. So a unique challenge for us, larviciding is obviously going to be a cost issue for us. As Rebecca said, we'd have to work with our partners, the refuge system, or U.S. Fish and Wildlife, but also our Department of Natural Resources and Department of Environment, Great Lakes, and Energy there. So a unique challenge. It sounds like people have some neat ways to deal with this bug, and it was interesting to hear the vector rankings on that. That I would agree with a lot of that. Michigan has had a heck of a time with EEE the last couple years, and I just will give a shout out to Dr. Edward Walker with MSU. Has done a lot of research and still doing research on EEE complex in Michigan, with a lot of it going on in the southeast portion of the state, and now being found to be up in the middle, and really finding that tied to that primary Coquillettidia habitat, the Coquillettidia melanura. Fortunately for us in Saginaw County, we do not have that boggy maple swamp complex. We just have some lowland flooding, a lot of lowland flooding in our area. So tons of perturbans. What we're missing in the EEE concern is the primary vector in Coquillettidia melanura. All right, with that, I'll turn it back over.
All right, excellent, Bill. I know we run a few minutes over here. If someone has a question, I guess we can entertain some questions, and then we'll close out. Does anybody have any questions for any of the presenters? Lisa?
To the gentleman that just spoke, Bill?
Yes.
Can you guys treat within the refuge, the wildlife refuges that you spoke of?
Very good question. We do. Yeah, we do a spring aerial treatment for spring 80s. As you mentioned, Coquillettidia Perturbans, 80s canadensis is our primary vector in the spring, and we have a lot of them. And that northeast portion of the refuge borders right on the city of Saginaw. And we'll do about 1,000 acres, which is a very small percentage of the wildlife refuge. And it was like heck to even maintain that level of treatment on federal lands in this case. And we're finding that in these canadensis and many other species for that matter, we're finding a lot more Jamestown Canyon than we ever thought we had. So things are getting more complicated as we move forward, not any easier on this. So many more discussions to be had with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife, but very minimal. No adult treatment, of course. We're just using Vectobac G at a very low rate, one time a year by air on federal land.
Thank you, Bill. Anybody else? Okay, well, we will I think Emily with ADAPCO, the technical larvicide advisor, she's going to write up a brief summary of today's meeting, and we'll be working on getting that summary out to you. Chris Byrne will develop a link where you can go back and view the meeting or portions of the meeting. And just a big gratitude to all of you who took the time to prepare information. This has been a great information session. It exceeded my expectations by a mile. So with that, we're closing out here from the City of Chesapeake Mosquito Control, and hope everybody has a great day. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.